Well, it's official. Trump has now increased the tariffs to every single country to 15%, up from the 10% yesterday after losing the Supreme Court ruling. And I just want to talk about its implications on the cryptocurrency market because that's what you guys are subscribed for. Before I get into it, make sure you are subscribed, turn on your bell notifications because everything I say here is very time sensitive. And like I said, I've been calling for a overall relief rally when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto specifically, before going any lower, in my opinion, right? I think that the $84,000 range is going to make a lot of sense just because that's where a big CME gap is going to be filled, which historically speaking gets filled about 90% of the time anyway. Everything has just been very, very depressed when it comes to the cryptocurrency market. And so it would make a lot of sense to have some sort of relief rally because, again, could we go lower? And am I thinking that we could maybe even go towards like $35,000 to $40,000 eventually this year? Yes, but I think that the market makers and the people that basically control the price of crypto, they need market participants, and basically all the bulls and the people that have been longing have been liquidated pretty much from the market. So it would make sense to have some sort of like max pain where they start liquidating the short traders because, unfortunately, this is just a game of like the institutions and the whales, and they make most of their prices and they make most of their money basically manipulating traders and liquidating them and just generating fees, right? And so, like I said, that's probably why it makes the most amount of sense short term for us to go up because everybody thinks that we're going to go down lower from here, right? And that is a possibility, but I'm not really of that opinion just yet. Obviously, we have a stock market that's like all-time highs. Seemingly whenever it comes to like the administration, like everything is just super bad, right? Like I think that the economy is hurting, your everyday person is hurting, but hey guys, like the Dow is above $50,000, so like you guys should be happy, right? And I think that it would be very poetic to see the market getting punished for, kind of like this kind of language, right? Because like nobody really cares about that other than like the very successful people that benefit off of inflation. Obviously, you guys are sophisticated enough to understand that investing is very important because that's how you kind of outpace inflation over time. But your everyday person is just kind of hurting. And so I think that Bitcoin is the most sensitive when it ever comes to like this like uncertainty when it comes to these markets. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, we have these like low volatility weekend, or I should say low volume weekends, which creates a lot of volatility. Basically, what I think is going to be playing out in this whole scenario is I wouldn't be surprised to see Bitcoin start kind of like finding its footing, right? And I think that we'll probably see like a little bit of like an altcoin surge even because the altcoins have actually been down a lot worse than Bitcoin. And typically what happens is the altcoins obviously bleed a lot more whenever it comes to the price action because they're a lot more speculative. And typically what ends up happening when you have these like massive downturns is people start selling whatever they think is like most risky or whatever they're most fearful of. And they typically go towards like the more like safe haven, right? Which has been Bitcoin, but like Bitcoin's still down like 40% give or take. And so when you have this like kind of, landscape where most people have sold their altcoins, most of the prices are down below like their 2023 bear market lows, it would just make sense for me for them to have a kind of like a more aggressive bid coming into any sort of pump, right? I think that if Bitcoin goes up 20, 30%, altcoins can easily go up to, maybe even 50%, 100%, even maybe like a 2 or 3x if you're like very, very low on, whatever you're investing in. Now, obviously, I don't advocate for that, but I think that would kind of bring back a little bit more, sentiment and positivity into the crypto market for them to do anything, kind of like down the road, right? So if you look at this from like a market maker's perspective or people that just like need participants, you need excitement and you need investments into the market so that you can have basically order flow, right? And so that's why I think that we're going to have short-term bullish action. And from there, I think that we're going to need to reassess whatever goes on next. So I just kind of wanted to hop in here and just kind of give you like an update, right? I think that as long as we don't go to a war with Iran and as long as these like tariffs, I don't think it gets any worse from here. I think that 15% is the max that he's able to basically impose on these countries. I do think if we can somehow just kick the can down the road whenever it comes to us going into a recession and all this like data that kind of comes out, I don't see any reason why we're going to go lower initially, right? Typically what ends up happening is over the summer, that's usually where we get kind of like bearish trends. And like I said, we've had like almost 5 consecutive negative candles for Bitcoin in particular. And that's not really something that happens quite often, right? Like I think that historically that's never happened. And so it just makes sense for us to get some sort of relief rally, get the market kind of excited, get the sentiment a little bit higher before deciding if we're going to go lower or whatever the case is from now. So to wrap this all up, I'm calling for a relief bounce I think it's going to be pretty seismic whenever it comes to these altcoins and crypto. I think that precious metals are still going to do good as long as like these war tensions kind of go on, unfortunately. And whatever happens to the stock market remains to be seen. I don't think that they're going to let this crash because we're in midterm years, and so both sides of the aisle need to basically look good so that they can win, right? And obviously, if the stock market, which is the only thing that Trump is really like kind of talking about whenever it comes to like his achievements, because everything else is kind of like, in my opinion, in the trash. He's done a little bit of things right, in my opinion, but like you can't really say that the economy, like everyone's just hurting, like I've said, right? So I don't think he can afford to have the stock market go down. He's very sensitive to that and real estate. So I think as long as we can continue to do whatever has been going on, I think that crypto is going to benefit from there. So with that being said, that's kind of like my little market update. I'm going to be making a video a little bit later, so be on the lookout for that. With that being said, have a great day, guys. Bye.